welcome everyone to our webinar this afternoon on unlocking employment engagement and creating a meaningful work environment. So I'm joined this afternoon by the amazing Marleen Deleu, founder of NextConomy, a freelance knowledge platform and community in Belgium. So Marleen, thank you so much for joining me.
Oh, well, thank you, Hannah, for having me. And looking forward to this conversation because it's a very important topic.
Absolutely. And well, we're delighted to have you as you're such an expert on freelancers and total talent management. And with your expertise, I'm sure you'll be able to provide a lot of insights for us today across all of the topics we intend to look at. So we'd like to have a focus on how organizations can look at creating a meaningful environment, looking at things like culture, wellbeing initiatives, sustainability, and of course DE&I, kind of the topics on everyone's tongue at the moment, and seeing how we go from there. So maybe we'll kick things off with a bit of a look at culture and how this can be a big player. So how do you think culture can infuse a sense of purpose? Basically looking at kind of how total talent can be involved, as well as our contractors as they sit a little bit on the outskirts.
Yeah, well, maybe because you mentioned already a few times total talent management, maybe just start with explaining a little bit what is total talent management. Well, what we mean by that is if you look at an organization, any organization, it's much more than the people on the payroll. It used to be people on the payroll, that's your company, that's the organization. It was very clear to everybody, to the organization, the managers there, and to the workforce. But if you look now at an organization, it's much more an extended enterprise. There's so many people contributing to the success of the organization that are not on the payroll. There's a variety of legal contract forms. You can collaborate with people at great distance. Corona proved that you don't have to be in the office or in the factory. So you can work and contribute from anywhere in the world to the success of an organization. And of course, coming back to your topic, culture and purpose, of course, you have to rethink how to set up a culture in your organization. Culture is driven by the top of the organization. They define the culture in an organization. And so if your workforce has changed, you also have to reconsider how you will create the culture and maintain that culture in your organization. And so the most important thing to do is, of course, to be very clear about your purpose. What are you doing as an organization? What you stand for? What are your values? And how will you achieve your goals that you set? And then, of course, communicate on this. Communication is key to establish that. And that's where so many organizations go wrong, because they forget to communicate. They communicate with their clients or potential clients, their prospects, but they forget to communicate internally. They don't have really great stories. Storytelling is so important to get the message through. And of course, what we see is that in most organizations, they have no idea who is this part of the workforce that is not on the payroll, these contingent workers in all their different contract varieties. So yeah, that's a great part. And in some organizations, it's 20 to 50 or even 60% of their entire workforce that is not on the payroll, that they don't communicate their purpose, their mission, their goals, their success stories, whatever. They forget all these people. So it's really, their culture is in danger if they continue doing that, forgetting to communicate with this part of the workforce.
Absolutely. It can be, I guess, a bit of a tricky one when you have a lot of contractors within your organization, and particularly with a lot of misclassification laws around the world and how much you can bring contractors into crafting culture and bringing a sense of belonging. So how would you look at bringing contractors into that side of the business without, I guess, overstepping in any way of misclassifying their role?
Yeah, well, of course, you always have to stay within the legal framework. There's no discussion about that. But within the legal framework in most countries, you still have the possibility to communicate with your contingent workers. So the reality now in, I think, 90% of the organizations is that they don't communicate because they're so rigid. They think if we do communicate with this part of our workforce, we jeopardize and we have legal risk. If it's not the case, if you turn it around and you say, no, we benefit as an organization to have these people on board and to make use of their expertise, their knowledge, and to connect them with our mission and to make them contribute to the maximum, then you have to consider, okay, within the legal framework, what are the possibilities? What is allowed? Instead of looking at it from the negative point of view, you look at the opportunities and see, okay, what is it that we can do? And even if it's a minimum, it's always more than nothing. And so, yeah, engaging all your workers to your mission, to your purpose is just key to success in any organization. And so you have to really look at what do we do for our own employees, how do we connect them to our mission, and then translate that to some way of communication that is allowed within the legal framework in each country. And if we look at Belgium, which of course I know the best, then there's a lot of things that are possible. So no communication at all about your work, your ambitions and your mission is absolutely not done. There is a lot possible within the legal framework.
Absolutely, I agree. I think a lot of people work off fear and the risk around involving their contingent workforce into their culture and are afraid to bring them in to add purpose to it. So I think organizations definitely do need to look further into that and how they can bring their contingent workforce into their full view. Well, I suppose what goes hand in hand with culture is really looking at worker well-being and how that can also help improve your culture as well. Really goes hand in hand. So how do you think well-being programs and worker satisfaction really helps improve performance in the business?
Well, I always say contingent workers, they are like humans. How bizarre is that? You know, they're not means. And that's what they're mostly considered as means. You know, there's a gap and we need some resources the really short notice. So, okay, we'll look for contingent workers. So there's just means to fill out the gap. And yeah, that's old school thinking. You do need the best talents in the labor market, the scarcity in the labor market. So you're competing with other companies that may have a more attractive proposition to the scarce talent in the labor market. So you have to be very attractive to any talent in the labor market. You cannot allow it as an organization to miss out on talent, any talent. So you need the best resources. And so, yeah, connecting everybody to your mission and to engage people that are really driven by the same purpose, the same values, and also, you know, with the culture and all the programs that you do for the people in your organization. You know, if the message to the contingent workers is, hey, hello, come work with us. This is what we do. This is what we stand for. And hey, we treat you like a human. You know, then you stand out from the crowd, from the other competitors fighting for the same talent. So well-being is absolutely crucial for retention of your own employees, of course, but also in your talent acquisition strategy. It's something that you can use as a unique selling point to be very attractive.
Absolutely. That what you said about contractors being looked at as a means is very old school thinking, but I think it's still a mindset that we are working on changing and is quite common even across some of the largest companies in the world. We're still seeing, so that kind of, I guess when we're looking at upskilling and continuous learning opportunities and the introduction of AI and skill shortages and things like that, a lot of organizations are looking to freelancers to fill those gaps and for short term. I guess so when we're looking at upskilling, continuous learning, how can we can create a culture that encourages that? And is that relevant to freelancers? Or are they there to fill the gap?
Well, I always filling up the gap again. It's old school thinking, because if you look at the reality in the labor market, there's in almost all countries there's an increasing number of freelancers. And if you look at the profiles of these freelancers, it's not the poor people driving on a bike delivering food, and it's not the Uber taxi drivers. The majority, 90% of them, are high skilled senior profiles. And so they're the ones who dare to set or to make the step to become an independent worker and to take their career in their own hands. So if you look at, we need resources, we need knowledge, we need certain expertise, and you look at the labor market, yeah, you have a tough time if you're only recruiting in the pools where the perm talent is and the people looking for a perm job. There's a lot of these people move to different pools, and they move to the pool with the freelancers. So if you're not recruiting in that tool, you're missing out on that talent. So it's not just filling up a temporary gap anymore. It's even structural. And in certain countries like Belgium, it's not forbidden to work for years and years with external workers. So there's no limitation to that. That's not the case in other countries. But again, many projects are temporary. How long is knowledge value? Valid? Things change so fast. Almost by definition, the knowledge that you need is temporary because technology evolves and your needs change. So, everything becomes a project. So how much of the work is forever, is perm? Not that much anymore. So yeah, it's on both sides. It's the labor market that's changed, and it's your top talents that you're looking for who move to the freelancer pool. And it's within your organization, how much of the work is perm? Yeah, you cannot predict the future, and you need to be agile. Technology evolves. So yeah, what is the definition of perm? I don't think there's that much work anymore left that is perm.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I think organizations are in a bit of a panic mode when it's coming to upskilling at the moment in time. They are turning to freelancers, and when there's not a focus on these new learning opportunities, upskilling and looking at your current workforce and training them up, there is going to be a gap and people will go elsewhere. So I couldn't agree more. We are definitely seeing the trend going that way.
Yeah, well, upskilling and reskilling are very important, of course, but they go slow. It takes time, and you're not always certain of the result. You can put people in a training program, but you don't know if they like it, if it sticks to them, if they'll apply whatever they were taught. So it's always a big question mark, and maybe they leave you after they finished the course. They're headhunted by your competitor and they leave. So there's always a lot of uncertainty. Nevertheless, you should, as an organization, invest in reskilling and upskilling your current workforce. Like 5 years ago, people were just thrown out. Okay, we don't need you or your qualifications anymore. So okay, there's an exit door. That is not the smartest thing anymore to do, because there's scarcity and you might risk not to find any resources anymore. And the people that currently work for you, some of their knowledge and skills may be abundant, but they know your organization. They're you can trust them. They're there. So investing in reskilling or upskilling could be a great move to engage them to your mission, your new goals, your new purpose, and to make sure that there's continuity in within the organization. They know your history. Somebody has to know what happened in the past and what wasn't the smartest thing that we ever did, things like that. What happened with this or that client, all that history is of relevance and important in the future as well. So yeah, make sure that there's also continuity within the organization.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. It's so important for continuity of business to still have those people that the culture is instilled in from day one and can carry that on as well and build on it and provide growth around it. So I guess coming back to meaningful work and crafting the culture that supports that and underpins that, it would be remiss of us not to really delve a bit deeper into diversity, equity, and inclusion. As this really is how an organization can ensure a sense of belonging to its talent. But it's probably something that organizations are still fine-tuning and maybe don't have perfected just yet. And everyone's kind of delving
Very nice way of putting it, Anna.
Yeah. So I guess, what have you seen in the market when it comes to diversity, equity, and inclusion, and what initiatives have you seen that you think are effective in promoting it?
Well, unfortunately, in Belgium, I don't know about other countries, but in Belgium, diversity and inclusion is not on the agenda of the majority of the organizations. There is different studies that, for instance, within talent acquisition, there's really almost pure racism. There's a gender bias. It's proven time and time again that there's a lot of biases, and which is absolutely, not should not be the case. So yes, there is still a lot possible. Let's put it positive. So there's room for improvement. And I think it should be much more on the agenda of the C-level in organizations, and for the right reasons. It's again, it's about humans. It's about having skills on board, having talent on board, and not missing out on anybody in the labor market because there's scarcity. And companies still create their own scarcity. I hear them cry time and time again. And I think, look at yourself, look at your own website. What do you communicate? There's hardly any company with a button, freelancers, please apply here. Or really nice stories and examples of their diversity and inclusion. It's still a tradition that above 50 people can be laid off because they're too old and too expensive. All these things are still happening, even if there's scarcity in the labor market. So I find it very frustrating that even in this labor market, in this situation, organizations continue to hold on these old HR practices, and they don't have the mindset to change that and to look at themselves and say, hey, what can we do? How can we deal with the reality? They keep on complaining and they just sit there and do nothing or almost nothing. Yeah. So there's a lot of room for improvement. Absolutely.
Absolutely. I completely agree that it needs to come from top level down, from amongst the C-suite to trickle down to every part of the organization to put it at the forefront of everything that they do. If that's not happening, it's a recipe for disaster from the get-go, to be quite honest. So hopefully we'll start to see more organizations over the next couple of years get on board and start to see it at the forefront of all of their initiatives and everything that they do. But I guess we'll have to watch this space and see.
Yeah, well, it starts with acknowledging that there's different kinds of people, in gender, in color, whatever. And that's not a threat, but an opportunity. That's a strength, and that you should enforce that, and to actively start looking for all these differences in the labor market. And then there's huge pools with talent that open for you. So it starts with the organization, and again, the top management team. They really have to open minds for this, and work with their HR team and their business leaders to really enforce this vision as an opportunity and not see it as a threat.
Absolutely. And you see it across the big organizations that have great D&I strategies in place, that their employees do feel a sense of belonging. They have large talent pools. People are fighting to work for them. So it really is a great initiative to ensure that everyone feels belong, part of the organization. And it really does create that culture and provide meaningful work to everyone that's part of the organization. Another thing that we're seeing when it comes to, I guess, creating a meaningful work culture, and particularly, I guess, within the industry that we work in, when it comes to flexible work and remote work, this is, I guess, where the freelancers thrive, because they can apply to jobs anywhere in the world for project-based work. How do you think, I guess, remote work and flexible work improves satisfaction and engagement across talent in your organization?
Well, again, I'm really, I've been in this industry for many years, and I think this is such a wonderful evolution, and this opens up so many talent pools. It's really fascinating what is happening. But I'm a very optimistic person and an opportunistic person, so I always see the opportunities in this. When I talk to people in organizations, I hear, oh, whoa, it makes them afraid, and they only see a lot of hurdles and issues and problems, and they find it so complicated and difficult. A good example in Belgium is a company called Silverfin. What they did, they're in the IT branch, and they said, okay, we'll use flexibility and remote as a starting point. For us, that's an opportunity. We're looking for very scarce talent that we know in the Belgian labor market is hardly, it's almost impossible to find. So by definition, we look outside the Belgian borders, and we're a project-based company. We always do projects, so flexibility is just default, and remote is default. And then they solved anything around these two core HR strategies, HR tactics, I should say. And so they solved anything that has to do with it. So the legal framework, the administrative framework, anything to do with the people working in that structure. So it's about cultural differences, it's about time zones, it's about having the need to have a single point of contact, whether you're living and working for this company in Nigeria, or you're in Iceland, or you're in Lithuania. It doesn't matter. You have a single point of contact, and she's always there to help you, to support you. And they really anticipated on any issues, possible issues, and of course, it was a learning curve, of course, but it's so beautiful the way they set this up. And they have these remote teams that work together on the same project. And yeah, they have on Friday afternoons, talking about culture, for every Friday afternoon, they have a virtual drink as a team. They have their CEO talking to them during these meetings. You know, it's really about connecting, communication, even if it's virtual. And I think once or maybe twice every year, they fly everybody into a certain place and they have in-person meetings and the program workshops and things. So really, they really are building a community that collaborates remotely, but from time to time is connected also in person. Yeah, it's really great. It's a great example.
Absolutely. It's nice that organizations, even when they're fully remote, they can still come together and connect, still have that people touch points and face to face when it's needed. We have seen such a change in direction with flexible work and the use of freelancing and working from home over COVID. Organizations just really started to open up and look at other ways of work now that everyone was forced and mandated to stay at home. So it really just kind of took off, and flexi time now people don't even bat an eyelid at, whereas I feel like that was kind of a taboo way of working prior to COVID. So it's great that organizations are adapting to change, but I guess it's unfortunate they were forced to have to get there.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. Absolutely. But yeah, you know, it's the same thing. You just need to make sure that people, wherever they are connected to your purpose, that you have the right talent on board. Of course, if somebody is not interested at all in your purpose and doesn't share the same values, of course, that's not the right talent. So that's where it really starts. But if you do have this team, it doesn't matter where they are, if they're next to you in the same office or they're virtually connecting with you. It's about, yeah, communication, and set up the communications in both ways. Of course, it's not just the organization sending to their talents. You also need to facilitate the talent to be able to communicate back to you and to yeah, share their concerns, their thoughts, their suggestions for improvement, etc. So it really has to be an open communication in both ways.
Absolutely. Well, I might just finish up on this point and get your thoughts of how can organizations begin to look at tracking the progress and continuous improvements in their efforts in the areas that we've discussed, so around culture and well-being, DE&I, and kind of meaningful work. How can organizations look to kind of track that progress?
Well, I think it starts with setting goals. If you don't set a goal, you don't know, yeah, if you're growing, if you're improving. So dare to be ambitious, and set clear goals, and then a path towards it. So it's about data analysis. You know, collecting data. What's our current situation? You know, how many women do we have in certain positions, or whatever, you know, whatever it is. So make sure you have the data, and then design a strategy to match to your business objectives. Yeah, make it relevant, of course. And then yeah, you just start implementing your initiative, your plan to achieve the goal. And yeah, on the way you have evaluations, and you measure the progress, you evaluate what works, what didn't work, why was that, are we going to keep this this strategy, or do we need to change that? And then continue auditing to the plan. And so if you don't set a goal and maybe really work with quota, then yeah, nothing will change, nothing will happen. So it really, again, it's the top management. They determine the culture within an organization. And of course, by definition, they can also change the culture and improve the things that are needed to be improved. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, that is a great point to end on, Marleen. Well, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing all of your amazing thoughts around meaningful work and giving it a look at across total talent as well. It's very insightful. We'll share all of your information when we're posting the webinar along with NextConomy so everyone can follow and keep up to date with you. But thank you very much for joining
Great.
today.
Thank you, Hannah. Good luck.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Marleen. Bye-bye.